We finally have a little bit more insight into what Senator Joe Manchin wants in the reconciliation bill. Basically nothing, or at the very least he'd be satisfied with nothing, and that's not just me reading his behavior, his whole total vibe and all that. This is what he is saying to other senators. So he and Bernie Sanders apparently squabbled behind closed doors on Wednesday, with Manchin using a raised fist goose egg to tell his colleague he can live without any of President Biden's social spending plan. And we're finding this out because other senators were there too. Jon Tester, Chris Coons. So Tester said, Joe said, I'm comfortable with nothing, while Bernie said we need to do $3.5 trillion. The truth is both of them are in different spots, said Tester. Thank you, Senator Tester. We had not known that in detail over the past few months. But apparently, yeah, Manchin said, I'm comfortable with zero and did the old goose egg. The great thing about that is that Joe Manchin is free to just say that behind the closed doors. He can cut the programs, but he never has to go across West Virginia, stopping at the homes of people struggling in a variety of ways. It's a place of great poverty, and tell them all, I'm happy if you get zero, door to door zero. That would be fine with me. And so look, some of this, we've known that he has problems with a lot of these programs, and we're gonna run through a bit of the specifics of what he wants cut. But I just love the call that he is comfortable with zero. He doesn't need it. He is literally a millionaire, Nina Turner.
John, I mean, he is set for the rest of his natural life. And so are his children, and most likely his children's children and children's children. So he could have, this is just flagrant indifference, just straight out indifference to the suffering of people in this country, and even especially in his own district. As you know, the state of West Virginia is the 6th poorest state in the United States of America. Lots of poverty there, struggle. We know at one point the coal miners were striking. They may still be striking right now, but a lot of needs are there. So he can just have this cavalier attitude about the social programs that the president is trying to push, because there's no skin off his nose, so to speak.
Yeah, Francesca?
Oh yeah, this is like his heart. This is his like empty little heart. That's what the goose egg is. It is like, oh, nothing there. Not like so many Republican senators, right? Except he's a Democrat. And this is what Democrats, and actually this is what conservatives, whether it's a conservative Democrat or it's a conservative Republican, hold over progressives and other Democrats who actually care, and independents who actually care, every single time, which is, oh, we could also do nothing. How about that? How about everyone dies and starves instead of just a few people? And so then progressives are sort of crawling back to the table, and the negotiating table, like Bernie Sanders, is he can't walk away, right? Because Sanders actually has a moral compass, right? And he's one of the few senators holding it. It's very shaky. Everyone wants to pry your soul from your hand in the Senate, and it's hard, or super easy if you just don't take a bunch of corporate money and have actual principles.
Yeah. Although we should point out, with Manchin, he has a special added layer of corruption. I mean, the vast majority of them are corrupted by their never-ending quest for more and more campaign finance donations. But for Manchin, he's literally making money off of coal himself. It's amazing. And so I'm glad that we're focusing on his zero, but we should also focus on the 6 zeros you'd need to get to the millions of dollars that he's personally earned from his own coal company. And while there has been some intermittent, reporting of that obvious that's fundamental conflict of interest. I was doing reading for this story where they were talking in particular about, for instance, the $150 billion to incentivize power plants to switch from fossil fuels to clean energy. And most of them, the vast majority of them, talked about, well, you can't get it because Manchin's not in favor of it. They never said coal company owner Joe Manchin would prefer if we keep burning coal. It's the most obvious corruption imaginable, but it doesn't really hurt him, because what percentage of his constituents do you think know that that's why we're not gonna have it, know that he owns that? And Nina, you mentioned those who were striking, coal miners who were striking. Like, he supposedly loves coal. Where's he been? I haven't seen him at that. Like, so he does care about coal, but he cares about the end result of it, not the black stone. He cares about the green bills at the end of it. And he's made so much money off of it. I just wish that was a bigger part of this conversation.
Well, we're making it a bigger deal. And yeah, people should have that little asterisk, read the small print. You know how on the medication commercials, and it's like, read the small print. We should be reading the small print here, which is simply Senator Joe Manchin is controlled by his owner donors. And he will not cross them at all for fear of not getting the donations that he needs on the one side, on the campaign side, and on the other side to continue to enrich himself in a way that causes pain to others. That is the small print. And so, and we've talked about this before, and Cenk has certainly mentioned this as well. In order to get him and also Senator Sinema to move, we should just go ahead and negotiate with the owner donors, because they're not making any moves without the approval and the blessings of the people who control them. And they don't care about the voters 100%. Or the residents in their states.
No, exactly. I'll just say two things. One, it makes me rethink what's in the pared down infrastructure bill, right? Like the roads and bridges infrastructure. Like if he's so against the social infrastructure, the Build Back Better Act and everything in it, and that's being stripped for parts as we speak, then what's in the very, very minimal actual infrastructure bill? Like who's making out on that bill? Like which donors, which private no bid contracts are getting funneled into the fine print of that? Like it makes me actually more dubious of the thing that is bipartisan rather than the thing, that we're working toward. It's, so it's super sus and suspect. The second thing I'm gonna say, and I've been racking my brain about Manchin for so long, I'm so sick of talking about him. I'm so sick of having to run around and figure out what's he thinking, what's in his heart, nothing, as we've gone over. And it's the following, it's that it actually doesn't matter. In fact, it doesn't matter that our senators are corrupt. It doesn't matter that they're bought and sold. And all the rest of it, all the window dressing that a lot of media likes to do of, how do we come to the table and all the negotiations? At the end of the day, corruption is part and parcel of our political system. And that is it's a painful pill to swallow, you guys. And absolutely, it moves us to take bigger and bolder action when it comes to getting something done, because we can't always definitely can't rely on Democrats to do it.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I have the same questions about the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Like we have effectively assembled through the course of this year, progressives have assembled a club sandwich of compromises. Like the initial 3.5 was already a massive, I guess that's one piece of bread. The fact that we just said basically you can have your bipartisan one, which privatizes some infrastructure and a variety of other things that are not progressive priorities. They actually go against our values. Those are the compromises we already made, and now they're cutting additional trillions. What have they had to give up? What has Sinema or Manchin or any of them had to give up? Effectively nothing. And you're totally right about the baked in corruption. I wish that, like the little bit that you might hear through all of your schooling about corruption is about bribery. And you get this image of somebody using their foot to move a bag filled with hundreds under a bathroom stall to a person. And it's ridiculous that if Joe Manchin, if I handed a bag with $3,000 in it to Joe Manchin, he was like, yeah, he could go to jail for that. But if he stops legislation so that he can make millions of dollars, that's cool. That's just part of the system. Isn't that messed? I almost swore. Isn't that messed up that that's the way that it works? But that is the way that it works. And corruption occasionally gets talked about very briefly. There was a congressional cycle years ago where, because of Duke Cunningham, we talked about it a bit. But almost every single one of those representatives who were campaigning on it was at least as corrupt. They've just legalized their form of corruption, and they all point at the one person who is stupid enough to make it personal.
Because it's a showstopper, John. Once we talk about that, if we had an honest conversation about who has been bought and sold in elected office, it's a showstopper. Suddenly, we understand we don't have the greatest democracy on earth. We progressives already knew that, but it's like, well, What do you do? So you kind of continue the circus act as if everyone's operating in good faith, and they're absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so true. And just follow the money. I mean, not only follow the money in the budget to see where priorities are, but follow the money, the trails and trails of money that lead to these elected officials. It is absolutely legal in the United States of America to bribe politicians. You got to do it a certain way, John, as you laid out. One way gets you put in jail, but the other way, let's go overseas and raise money across the waters and not deal with the policies that need to be dealt with. Senator Sinema, let's have fundraisers and wine caves, and multi extra wealthy people can just pour money and have their will done, even if the overwhelming majority of the American people who are siding right now with both the hard infrastructure and the soft infrastructure plans. But that is not going to be the reality because the donors do not agree. And this conversation is certainly reminding me of something that Mother Jones once said when she visited somebody in jail, and she asked the man, what was he in jail for? And he said, I stole a pair of shoes. She said, if you had stolen a railroad, you'd be a senator.
Yeah.
That is the reality today.
Yep, that's a great point. Yeah, you don't hand over a bag with $3,000. Have a bag with $300,000 a year waiting for them as soon as they get out of office. They just have to do what you want before then. It's amazing. Anyway, they say that some sort of deal might be possible. Some of them were saying within a day. Manchin says that's not going to happen. Maybe he's had a change of heart and he wants more. That'll be fun to see. But at some point, maybe there will be a thing. And so I wanna make sure that before we go into the weekend, people have an idea of our current best understanding of what might be in and out of it. So I'm gonna list all these things and I wanna hear your reactions. So originally, there was gonna be 12 weeks paid family and medical leave, which would be by no means any sort of international record, but don't get excited, it's gone, it's down to 4. So 4, if you get horrifically ill, if you have a child, you better get that bonding in that 1 month, because that's all you get. A 1-year extension of the child tax credit. Isn't that nice of them? It's incredibly popular, cuts childhood poverty. They're gonna give it to you for 1 more year. They will do universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds. I hope that they get very well educated during those 2 years, because the free community college is out. They're not gonna do that, but don't worry, they are going to be making it a little bit more affordable. So if you're a low income student, instead of about, I think, $6,000 a year in Pell Grants that you could have gotten, you can get $500 more. So I don't know what you're worried about, like paying for college for. They're gonna give you $500 more. And Bernie Sanders wanted to have dental and vision coverage added to Medicare. They're not gonna do that, but they are gonna give you an $800 voucher for dental. So that's nice. You know it's good because it's a voucher. And the clean electricity program, one of the largest single components to deal with the climate crisis, is likely out, very specifically because Joe Manchin owns a coal company. I will never get tired of saying that. I hope that you never get tired of hearing it. And that is currently what it looks like. Oh, there's also another thing that's not in it. We're gonna be talking about that a little bit later on in terms of how they're paying for all this. But that is the current shape of it in rough terms.
Crumbs. I mean, we went from progressives pushing for 10 billion, and let us remind folks who are with us, this is over 10 years. So it's not all in one, over 10 years. So progressives said, let's do 10 billion, or 10 trillion, excuse me, let's do 10 trillion. Then the point was, okay, let's do 6. And now, then it was 3.5, let's agree with that. And remember at one point, Senator Manchin said 4 trillion for infrastructure should be a starting point. I wonder what changed his mind on that. So now we went from 10 from progressives, 6, everybody was kind of letting that marinate, to 3.5 trillion. Now to about $1.9 trillion. It is absolute crumbs. And you know what is going to happen once that negotiation is settled and everybody kind of gets on the same page? They're gonna be out there celebrating this foolishness. And I wanna say another word, it begins with an S. They're gonna celebrate this once again, selling out the American people, the poor, the working poor, and the barely middle class, and asking people to get giddy and excited about the crumbs from the table.
Yeah, I mean, I am heartened that at least universal pre-K was not cut. I wonder if there's like a diploma after those 2 years, instead of the free community college is like a very cute little diploma, and mini one, very, very adorable. But if there are just a few things that we can actually defend and expand, like universal pre-K is a start. It is, just like things like Medicare and Medicaid, once they are enacted, it is very difficult to roll them back. In fact, we want to expand them. If anything, they're incredibly popular. My question is if this goes forward with the crumbs, right? But like, hey, there's it's a pretty good crumb, a little chocolate chip in that crumb, maybe half a one, right? Is it gonna be implemented in time before, the political shenanigans and machinations start in, right? Meaning, are Democrats gonna actually, since they've done kind of a bad job selling this, I mean, especially the president. I know we're gonna talk a little bit about Biden later on, but he hasn't done a good job of selling it thus far. If it passes, how are you gonna actually tell the American people, guess what? This is what we've done and we are doing. And if you can't get your kid enrolled, this year, it'll be next year, or is it gonna be in 6 years? You know what I mean? Like the implementation is really key, and the narrative and the language and the rhetoric around it and how it's really being discussed. I mean, we can't even roll out a vaccine in a way that feels compelling enough, a life-saving vaccine. And granted, it's largely thanks to the erosion of any kind of medical trust, thanks to Trump, as well as a privatized Medicare medical industry. But still, right?
Yeah.
This administration still needs to show that they've got the language and the tools to really just put that final seal on this and make sure the American people know what's in it.
Yeah, you're right. It's also entirely possible that in a couple of years we'll have Republicans opting out of free pre-K because it makes their kids magnetic or something. By the way, you make a good point about taking whatever is left of these crumbs and then selling to the American people. So why does that matter? Well, politically, not substantively, politically it matters because we're gonna have midterms and we're gonna have a presidential election. It also matters in another way, and I'm gonna end this segment on a kind of a down note that I literally have not heard anyone talking about, and I don't understand why. So Nina was totally right. This, like, let's say it's $1.9 trillion. That's over 10 years. That's assuming you get 10 years, because if you do nothing with the mandate you've been given, and if the Republicans take control, who is to say that they can't use reconciliation to defund the programs that Biden is funding via reconciliation? Why are we assuming that if the Democrats don't maintain control, the Republicans won't just kill all of this anyway? I don't know, maybe it's unlikely. I think it's really weird that no one is talking about that though, because before we're even at the halfway point, we could potentially have President Harris or President AOC or President Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, these are all possibilities we should be thinking about as well. I don't know, maybe that's getting into dark territory. Yeah.
That's not gonna happen.
Well, I hope not. Tucker Carlson would defund it though.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.